much for joining me and taking time out of your day to meet with me and get in front of the platform that I have the privilege of working with. I want to just dive right in and kind of start high level. Tell us a little bit about you, people that haven't met you yet, why you decided to run for school board this year.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Oscar, also for the opportunity to put my views out in public. After high school, I attended and graduated from the United States Air Force Academy with a degree in mechanical engineering. I went on to fly the F-15 on active duty. After active duty, I went to the commercial airlines. I've been at United Airlines for a little over 30 years and currently am an A320 captain here in Houston. I also am an active law enforcement participant, and that is in an armed capacity. I have a wife who is an Humble ISD elementary school teacher, and I do have to brag on her, even though this is about me. This moment's about her. She is Teacher of the Year at Bear Branch Elementary. We also have a daughter who is 13, an 8th grader here in middle school in Humble ISD, and in August will be entering high school in Humble ISD. Over the last 8 years, we have watched a pretty drastic decline in quality of education, and it started getting our attention a few years ago. And as I delved more and more into the issue, I became acutely aware of just how sharp the decline is. And not to sound hokey, but this is how a veteran looks at things. One day I was riding by my wife's school and I saw her children on the playground. Not her children, the kindergarten children were on the kindergarten playground. And I looked at them and I said, you know, I can fight for just my wife and my child. That was my initial goal in this endeavor of school board candidate. But I saw those children, I realized they're 5 and 6 years old, and 12 years from now, when they graduate the Humble ISD school system, some of them will go to the military. Some of those will become law enforcement. Some of those will become firefighters and first responders, and some of them will become teachers. I want to fight for them. It's what's in our military blood. My grandfather was military. My dad was military. I'm military, a brother, a nephew, and my son. I'm the only Air Force one, the only one with common sense. They're all Army, but other than that, I want to take the baton and pass it to the next generation. I'm not ready to give that baton up yet. I want to fight for all of the kids in the district and all the teachers, not just my own.
All right, so let's dive a little bit into your campaign. I went through your website. I've heard you talk at a couple forums now. One facet of the campaign is what you mentioned it in your opening here, a drastic decline in test scores. So talk to me about that.
Okay. The test scores are analyzed by myself and other people on my campaign team. And we did a deep dive into the analysis of data supplied by the Texas Education Agency. The Texas Education Agency publishes STAR/EOC or end of course grades each year on how schools do. If you go to a school board meeting, they will simply say, well, 3rd grade math went up by 6 points in 2021 or whatever, or 2022 is what they said. That may be true, but if the state of Texas went up by 8 points, we've actually declined relative to the state of Texas. Because what our team did is we analyzed based on all students, all grade levels 3 through 12, and reading and math against every district in the state of Texas, so that we could come up with a Texas state average and how we as a district compared to the state of Texas average. But this wasn't only our work. There's a third party called Public School Review, which does only that as a corporation. They take or as a company, they take the data from different districts all across Texas, but all across all 50 United States, analyze them and put them out there for you to see. And this is also done by the Texas Education Agency, all 3 of them. Ourselves, Public School Review, as well as Texas Education Agency, came up with the same results. Our reading scores from 2012 to 2022, last year's results, we were 9 points above the Texas state average in 2012. Now we are about 1 point above the Texas state average in 2022, a 10-year drastic decline. but it's even worse in math. In math, we were also 9 points above the Texas state average in 2012. We are, believe it or not, in Humble ISD, 4 points below the Texas state average in math scores. But the school district won't show the data that way. They do not do a 10-year look back. They do not graph their data, and they have no baseline of the Texas state average. Their statistics are very deceiving, and you need to do it the way we have done it, the way Public School Review does it, the way Texas Education Agency does it. If you hand it in, when I went and got a master's degree or an MBA at Webster University, a statistics problem, and I handed it in the way the school board and the school district supplies the numbers to the common public, I would have gotten an F. That is not valid statistics. The way the other three agencies, my campaign, TEA, and Public School Review do it, is how you properly do statistics. One more big number they talked about was college, career, and military ready. At the October 18th, 2022 school board meeting, they stated, meaning the administration, that 38% of Humble ISD seniors graduating, 38% were college, career, or military ready, their very own metric for success. Turn that number around. What that really means is 13 years later, after a child entered kindergarten and they graduated in 2022, 62% were not college, career, or military ready. That is what I mean by the drastic decline in Humble ISD.
So we've got an issue per your numbers in your campaign. What are you hoping to do, assuming you're elected, to make a difference in that area?
There are numerous things we need to address. First, the administration needs to realize and come out and say that we have this drastic decline. Right now, they are very happy with saying we have a large increase in math third grade scores in 2022. That is not how the district is performing. We need to give more time and more resources to the teachers. The teachers are where the student's mind is engaged and learning happens in the classroom. We have $1.5 billion in debt from the two bonds that have passed. That money, some of that money needs to be refocused to the teaching environment in the classroom so the teachers can get back to teaching. Don't give a teacher a Chromebook lesson that has 20 students with 4 working Chromebooks. Don't give a teacher a behavior challenged student that will knock over desks, throw chairs, pull her hair, call her slurs, rip up stuff off the walls, totally tear down her bookshelves. Give her a behavior specialist that sits side by that child that will understand the trigger of that child, and that behavior will cease. Because when that behavior happens, the entire grade level, those children, say it happens in first grade, the first grade is then evacuated to the other first grade classroom. 6 or 7 children from each, from his or her class get distributed into the other first grade classrooms. Sometimes they walk into that new classroom crying. The other children look at seeing their classmates crying like, what's wrong with them? And learning is done for the day in that grade level. And the nearby classrooms that hear all this madness and chaos through the walls, those children are frightened too. That child, that one child, is disturbing so much education that it needs to be addressed in either some behavior specialist to sit with the child, or that child needs to go to alternate forms of education where the child would better fit in and not be distractive to the entire grade level. Those are 2 of the solutions. More resources such as Chromebooks, paras, and time for the teachers, and to properly streamline, recognizing there's federal and state laws, how we handle the behavior challenged student.
All right, so thank you for that. Anything that you want to add to this topic before we move to our next topic?
Yeah, let me throw 2 more numbers at you. 10 years ago, Humble ISD was in the 82nd percentile of school districts in Texas. Now we are slipped to the 62nd percentile in Texas. If you look at distinctions, which are given out by the TEA based on STAR and EOC reports, just 3 years ago, Kingwood High School had 3 distinctions: social studies, science, and English. Today we have none. There are no distinctions that our seniors can add to their resumes when going to college to help them get accepted. The Woodlands High School has 5 distinctions. That's how far we have fallen. We need to charge our administration to come up with a plan to turn our education around so that reading and math go back to where they were. Let the teachers have time and resources to become a prominent district once again.
Thank you for that. I do want to pivot to our next topic. Our next topic on your website, you talk about a concern around what you call, for reading it here, sexual indoctrination. So tell us what you mean by that and what your concerns are in this area.
Okay, there are many topics in our libraries, in our schools, that are in our schools from TEKS, Texas Education Knowledge and Standards. TEKS are a set of plans that are created in Austin under Mike Morath. He forwards those to Washington. They come back from Washington to Austin, and then they come down to the district along with federal money. We have books in our libraries that have nothing to do with TEKS and have no curriculum value, but are still in our libraries. For example, we have one called Lily and Duncan. Well, how does Lily and Duncan get in our library in the first place? The American Library Association gathers books that have been given awards. For example, Lily and Duncan has been given an award as one of the best child reads of the year by NPR. Best child reads of the year. Lily and Duncan then gets gathered by the American Library Association or Scholastic at the book fairs and distributed via bundlers, people who gather all the books and ship them to the districts. In Lily and Duncan, it's a story. Again, this is for one of the best books of the year for children. So K-5, we're talking about elementary schools, K-5, about a teenage boy who knows that he's a girl and he wants to take his puberty blockers and asks his dad, I need them, Dad. I know every day I need them. And his dad refuses, recognizing his son is but a teenager. His mom, however, is quite opposite and enables their son to become, of his wish, their daughter, and takes the puberty blockers so that he can do his transition from son to daughter. So there's two things going on in this story. First, it's setting a school system and age K-5 inappropriate. This whole topic belongs at the home with parent and child. This has nothing to do with Humble ISD, in my opinion. But how come there is no counterbook? Where is the counterbook for the child that might read this and think, well, I want to become a boy or I want to become a girl? Where's the counterbook that says to complete this journey of changing your gender, that at some point in time, you are likely to elect permanent genital mutilation surgery? That is irreversible. Like I said, it's permanent and irreversible. Where is the counterbook to some of these books such as Lily and Duncan? There is no counterbook. There are no counterbooks. But if there were, I would also be for getting the counterbooks out of our libraries too. So it's not just one side of the issue I am against. I'm not denigrating any sexual predilection. I don't care what a child wants to do or, what an adult would like to do. That is their choice. If this child was 18 years old, I have no problem with them changing their life or changing their gender if that's what they choose. I just don't believe this whole choice should be discussed in the school level, either side of the story. Both sides of the story should be banished from our libraries.
Now, Mike, a common response to this part of your platform that I see is that this guy is banning books. What's your response to that?
I'm not a book banner. I am a subject banner. I have said that both sides, for the transformation and the counterbook as to some of the ramifications that are permanent to the gender modification, should both be out of our school district. It is not the books that I'm against, it's the entire subject that I am not for. That is what needs to be removed. Texas Penal Code 4324 states, if items in a book are attached to the prurient behavior of the child, and I had to look that word up, it means unwholesome, that these are deemed illegal in our school setting. The many lawyers that have approached me after a meet and greet, after a forum, and I talk about the books, feel that that's what's going to solve this problem, is a parent is going to have had enough because this board takes no action, and the superintendent takes no action, that we are going to get sued and they are likely to win, meaning the plaintiff. The superintendent's attitude is, if a parent wants a book in the library, it should be so that all students can read it. And then their solution is, we put the restricted books in an area of the library that only certain children through Home Access Center hack. We can monitor what our daughter reads. But there is no way my wife and I can go on Home Access Center and check to see if our daughter's girlfriend checks out a book from the restricted books that we don't want our daughter to read, hands it to our daughter. A week later, our daughter hands it back to her girlfriend, who returns the book. That is not a viable solution in any way, shape, or form. The whole subject belongs between parent and child. That is my stance.
All right. So I want to pivot to kind of the last of the three big tenets of your campaign, at least on your website, and that's around school safety. And obviously this is on the mind of a lot of parents right now. It's been in the news very, very recently, unfortunately. And while we do think of external threats, of course, we also are thinking about internal things, right? Bullying and fighting, and things along that nature. So I know this is something that you've laid out a little bit in your campaign. Walk us through what your plans are to address some of these fears that parents might have.
I've got two forms of bullying in the schools themselves. The cell phones are an amazing distraction and form of bullying as well in the schools. I feel the school board should direct to the superintendent to enact a policy that the students can have their cell phones on their body, in their backpack in particular. And the only time they are to address those cell phones are if a teacher directs for a student to use their cell phones for a class assignment. They have their cell phone on them in case there is an emergency. I understand that urgency to have that cell phone in today's society. It is a huge distraction when it is on in the classroom, which are all inappropriate times unless teacher directed. That would stop a lot of the bullying of what kids are saying about each other all day long on the cell phones. Secondly, I sat with Mr. Kohler, and Mr. Kohler has instituted a program called the Iron Men. They're fathers who walk the hallways and the common areas of his middle school, 3, 4, 5 at a time. Maybe there's not so many, maybe there's more on certain days. They just walk and by having their presence in the cafeteria, in the parking lots, like I said, in the hallways. The fighting in his school went down from nearly 1 a week to, when I interviewed him in his office in December, to 1 so far this year. The fathers are an amazing deterrent to the bullying that goes on in the schools. And now the big one, weapons in the school. A little history. On December 14th, 2012, a perpetrator named Lanza entered Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. When the police arrived on scene, just 4 minutes later, an amazingly successful law enforcement response, they heard a gunshot. They charged that gunshot correctly. When they got there, when the police got to where that gunshot was fired, and the investigators did their investigation, at the 4-minute mark, they learned that that gunshot they heard was that of Lanza taking his own life. In the preceding 3 minutes and some odd seconds, unknown how many seconds, more than 3 minutes, Lanza had already slaughtered 27 teachers and students. It is a fallacy to have our district policy that the best way to stop an armed intruder is by a response from the outside world. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. We have the Guardian and Marshal program that were enacted due to that shooting in Newtown, Connecticut in 2012 by the Texas State Legislature. The Texas State Legislature responded to that shooting in Newtown by creating the Guardian Marshal program that allows select volunteers that are school district employees to be armed within the school, recognizing that is the only true way to protect a school. A school is utterly defenseless from an inside shooter without weapons on the inside. They are just waiting for law enforcement to arrive. Yet we have taken no action as a school district. It is enacted in New Caney. It is enacted in Huffman. It is enacted in Santa Fe ISD. We are beginning to be surrounded by school districts who have the Guardian or Marshal program. And yet we sit here with the philosophy that our Humble ISD police, Humble Police, Kingwood Police, Atascocita, on and on and on, various security and police forces are going to be successful in getting to a school in time to stop a shooter. How many times do we have to learn this history that it doesn't work? Look what just happened in Nashville. Look what just happened in Uvalde. Look what happened in Newtown. I can go on and on, but that's why I believe in the Guardian program. You have many law enforcement retired people that are in the school district. You have very many law enforcement people that aren't retired, that left law enforcement to become part of the school district. You have veterans. You have retired military. You have some very adept people with weapons that are in our school district. I have done a lot of meet and greets. We've done some forums, and I continually get approached afterwards. I want to read a resume of a teacher that is teaching here in Humble ISD that approached me after a forum. NRA certified instructor in basic pistol, rifle and shotgun, home firearm safety, personal protection in the home, personal protection outside the home, NRA range safety officer, and Conroe Shooting Academy instructor. Why do we not allow a teacher of this type of credibility the opportunity to go through a very regimented training course where he'll get a background check, he'll get an intense psychological exam, and then we're still going to give this gentleman a minimum of 80 hours of training, and their jurisdiction is only their classroom or their school in the event of an active shooter. The weapon will be kept in a gun safe in their classroom if it's a teacher, in their office if they're not a teacher, wherever their office will be, or somewhere advantageous depending on what job function they perform in the district. All I hear is Mike wants to give teachers guns. It's as if I'm saying, well, hello, Mrs. Smith. Welcome to second grade. Here's your curriculum. Here's your roster. Here's your 40 cal, and here's a couple of boxes of ammo. Have a good school year. That is a gross mischaracterization of what are the Guardian and Marshal programs. They are for any district employee who is select enough, who meets the training requirements, passes the background check, passes the psychological exam, and completes a very rigorous training. And then you'll hear, well, police officers get thousands and thousands of hours of training. Yes, they do. Yes, they do, and they need it. But all these school district employees are going to have as their jurisdiction is their school in the event of an active shooter. 80 hours of training. If you've ever fired a firearm, 2 hours into that firearm training session, your hands are fatigued. We're talking about 40 training sessions at a minimum with this program. That is a lot of training to teach an individual who already is adept with a weapon, has a law enforcement type of experience, whether military or not, or trains people into law enforcement, as this instructor does, to become qualified in the program. Let's be like New Caney. Let's be like Huffman. Let's be like Santa Fe. I spent many hours on the phone with the chief of police, Chief Edwin Espinoza from Santa Fe ISD. He left me with this on one of our phone calls. He goes, Mike, before you hang up. I go, yes, sir. What is it, Chief? He goes, don't let talk become talk. This district will dread forever that we discussed the Guardian and Marshal program. And then evil knocked on our door in 2018, and we can't take it back. We will dread for generations our decision to take no action and to move forward with the Guardian and Marshal program. They now have it in place to prevent a future attack. When are we going to learn this lesson in Humble ISD?
All right, Mike, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I want to move to a topic that's pretty important to me, which is the relationship between the district and the community. And so I just want to get your thoughts on maybe what you see as the culture right now between the school board and the community, and the school board and the staff. Is it something that can be improved? And if so, how?
It's a very much a hot button topic, and it's a very important subject. The current relationship between the school board and the community, in my opinion, could not be much worse. If you go to a school board meeting, and you can go online, go to humbleisd.net, under school boards, they're archived. Watch how the parents get 1 minute to speak. A limited number of parents get 1 minute to speak at the school board meeting, and their concerns or issues are not even addressed by the school board. That's their rules, the school board rules. That needs to change. That should be at least 2 minutes, if not 3. In fact, I go a little further from that. Let me give you how I see the school board. The school board works for you. The community are my constituents. That's why I'm called a trustee if I am successful. They trust me to be their voice, to direct the superintendent and provide oversight of the superintendent, to guide our schools in the way we as a community wish them to be guided. That is all missing. There's little governance and little oversight. In fact, at one of our forums, 2 of my competitors for seat 6, Mrs. Carter and Mrs. Morrison, abstained from the question, should parents be given more than 1 minute to speak at a school board meeting? They wouldn't even give an opinion there. I advocate for this position. There should be 2 meetings a year that no school business is done. It is parent only, and perhaps on a Saturday, so that dads that are working dads or moms that are working moms during the week can attend. We'll take a poll to see what works best. Is it a weekday or is it a weekend? So that for an entire 2 hours, it is the people of our Humble ISD community, our families and friends, addressing the school board with their concerns, so we can get a feel of what the community expects of us as their trustees. That's how I feel.
I'd love to take a moment here. You probably know this already. I asked the community for some questions that they might want me to ask some of the candidates, and so I know that I got hundreds and hundreds of them. I can't ask all of them to you, but I'd love to just kind of get your ideas on a couple of these topics real quick. So one, teacher retention, and I know that you've got a teacher in the household, right? And so one concern we get a lot is, hey, I'm seeing my kids' teachers are leaving middle of the year this year, and I feel like I'm seeing that more than I normally do. Any thoughts on what we can do in that area, or is it a concern that we should be worrying about at all?
No, it's a huge concern. We should be worried quite greatly about it. The obvious one is greater pay. Okay, that everybody's going to agree if teachers were paid more, that would somewhat help the situation. I have also put forward from one of the positions I do in our union, where I work at United, that I want to propose to Austin that if a teacher has a 303B plan, which they do, and they put in, I'm sorry, a 403B plan, and they put forward part of their salary, say 2%, that the state match that. 3%, the state match that. So if a teacher puts in 3%, the state puts in 3% more to their 403B. This would help out with a younger teacher retention. Because if you start saving in your young 20s, 6% of your paycheck, compounded over time, when you retire at age 60, 65, somewhere in there, your lump sum or your amount you have saved will be a great nest egg towards your retirement, which right now most teachers do not take advantage of. With a matching, I think they would. And now we got to get to the issue I've already talked about, what happens in the classroom. Teachers tell me many things. They want more paras. They want more equipment. They want more time. The number one thing I hear is time, to get rid of all the other frivolous duties that are hoisted upon them by the administration, to eliminate those so a teacher can do what a teacher does great. And that is simply teach, to engage the mind of the child. We need to take, again, part of that bond money. We need to retire part of that bond too with that bond money. All of it cannot be useful, in my opinion, but take some of that money and throw it back into the classroom, to where we really have to invest so that we turn around our grades and let teachers have resources to teach. That's how I feel.
Thank you, thank you. Now, one other community question, and this one I heard several times, and so it's not so much policy driven. This is just more of a, we all have our bubbles, right? We all have our friends, our social bubbles, and the question is around, what are you doing as a candidate that our Humble ISD elections are at large, as you know. So, what are you doing as a candidate to intentionally familiarize yourself with people that are not part of your typical social bubble?
People that are not part of my social bubble and I are interacting at a Starbucks, at a Torchy's. We purposely go down to a Tascasita and eat, and I hand out my business cards. And I engage all types of minds that are initially not like mine on these issues, given calm, constructive communication. It is amazing to me how many people have turned around in their opinion. I have to put myself out there. There is no doubt about that. I cannot expect people to come to me. I go to them. Likewise, if I'm successful, I would like to continue to go to them with meetings in their community, not necessarily just at the school board meeting. Why don't we have a umbilized meet the trustees at Tin Roof Barbecue? Meet the trustees at Golden Corral. We can do these kind of things so that people can get to see us out in society. But when my wife and I go out, or I go out alone, I introduce myself, I ask for a few minutes of their time, not knowing what their ideology or their political beliefs are, or any of their beliefs on any of the issues, and try to engage them in conversation. Some people, excuse me, some people agree with the conversation, others don't want to have any part of it. But most, to their credit, most people really want to engage me and discuss the topic, and it stays very civilized. That's why I get out there.
Thank you for that. Now, I want to give you a chance to make some closing remarks and talk to us a little bit, make that final pitch, if you will. But before I do that, are there any questions or any topics that maybe I didn't bring up that you want to address before we get to that?
No, I'm very happy with your quality of interview. I think you've covered my three tenets of my campaign perfectly, and I appreciate the candidness of your interview.
All right, Mike. So thank you for all of your time and how gracious you've been in meeting with me. I want to give you a chance to give some closing remarks, like I said, and I'd love to hear. Look, I appreciate anybody that's willing to run for school board, put all of this time and effort and resources into, at best, now you're a volunteer, right? That's the ultimate goal is to become a volunteer. So I'd love to hear. We've got some really good people running across the spectrum and all the positions this year. So in your closing remarks, I'd love to also hear what do you think differentiates you from the people that are also running for the position you're running for?
I think there's two major things that differentiate me from any of the incumbents, even if they're not up for election right now. The four incumbents that are currently on the board that are not up for re-election or election, or the three that are. I'm for seat 7. The incumbent currently is Mrs. Morrison. My opponents, Mrs. Carter and Mrs. Marcus, are also vying for seat 7. I look at two things about Mike Grabowski that are missing from that board. I alluded to a statistic earlier: career, college, and military ready. The very three prongs that this school system looks at to judge if they have been successful or not. That third one being military ready. There's no military presence on this board. There's no veteran force on that board. There's no mindset that would think, hey, let me go to a high school. Let me go to their junior ROTC. Let me go mix with these children. Let me give them a veteran perspective. Let me see what they're thinking. Let me get their voice heard. Let me be there for them. That 1/3 of our metric is totally absent. Secondly, something that sets me apart. We have distributed shields into our district. Ballistic shields. A ballistic shield by itself is utterly useless. We have no law enforcement perspective on that board. When I went to training just recently, and I brought up the issue, hey, this is what they did in our school district. Head snapped around. Said, wow, you guys are going to Guardian and Marshall? I go, nope. School board fights it. Therefore, the superintendent gets away with not imposing it. And what are you going to do with the shields? I said, I don't know, because the feeling is known or the fact is known in law enforcement that a shield by itself is utterly defenseless. So there's part of where our $1.5 billion went down the drain. We need to have a veteran and a law enforcement perspective on our board of trustees. Those are the two unique qualities that Mike Grabowski brings to seat number 7 and the board in general. Thank you.
All right. So, Mike, let's say somebody watches this or listens to the audio podcast version of it and they like what they hear. They want to learn more about you. They want to figure out how they can contact you. How do we do that?
Okay, you simply go to my website, last name Grabowski, Grabowski, for trustee.com, with the four being the numerical four. So Grabowski for trustee.com. And on there, you'll get hyperlinked to 3 YouTube videos. You'll see how I feel on the grades, more data on it, on the sexual indoctrination, that I don't believe it belongs in our school, whether it's a book for it or against it. I'm not book banning, I'm subject banning. And the third, on the armed presence in the school, along with the Ironman program. And also it goes a little deeper into some checklists I've designed for teachers in case there is that god-awful moment where we have to deal with an armed intruder in one of our schools. That's how they can find out more about Mike Grabowski. Or on Facebook, on your Facebook page. Oscar, again, thank you for creating that. Thank you for being a very wonderful host of all of that. It allows many, many voices to be heard and my opinion to be shed. So thank you.
All right. Well, again, Mike, thank you so much for your time and being willing to meet with me and share all of your opinions and campaign with us. And Grabowski for trustee.com is where they can find out more about you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Okay, and I thank you too. Again, this was not a gotcha interview. You let me speak freely, and you do a wonderful job. And what I said, I mean. Vote for Mike, seat 7. Thank you.